Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's webcast, The State of PHP in the Enterprise, brought to you by Information Week, Zend, the PHP company, and broadcast by United Business Media Limited. I'm Eric Bruno, and I'll be discussing this topic with you today. Now on to the presentation, The State of PHP in the Enterprise. Here with me to discuss today's topic are Ido Ben-Moshe, Vice President of Global Support and Professional Services at Zend, and Elaine Lennox, Zend's Chief Marketing Officer. First part of the slides, we will go over an overview of a survey that we recently did on PHP in the enterprise. We'll discuss who is using PHP, how PHP is being used in the enterprise, overall the PHP developer experience as we see from our results of our survey, and some of the challenges and benefits that we saw from the survey about using PHP. And we will wrap that part up with the state of PHP as learned from our survey. As an overview, PHP is a mature technology. It's been used since the mid-1990s. As compared to other smaller languages, it has survived a lot of the hype that goes on, that we see that goes on with a lot of them. And our surveys have shown that PHP is pervasive throughout the industry and used at enterprises large and small. It's also used in a wide variety of applications, as we've seen from our survey results. We've also seen that there is direct benefit to developers and end users when PHP is used as a development language. Overall, the talent, tools, and frameworks available to PHP developers and organizations adds to its success. So who is using PHP? We had a survey that we put out on Information Week and a number of our development sites. But we focus only on decision makers, executives, people who make decisions within an organization, a development organization, not just the developers. And out of the roughly 232 executives and managers and decision makers that we pulled their results from, we saw a breakdown as such as we see in this chart here. 48% describe themselves as an executive who makes application development decisions. 44% describe themselves as architects, also responsible for technology decisions. And 37% describe themselves as managers or those who supervise software developers. Now, people were able to choose multiple here, so that's why some of these percentages add up to greater than 100%. And you'll see that throughout some of these questions, and I will point that out as well. Out of the roughly 200 or more respondents that we had, half were actively using PHP and half were planning to use PHP in the near future. Continuing with the who is using PHP, we saw that 41% of those who responded work for companies with over 1,000 employees, so relatively large companies. In fact, in the breakdown, we had one answer that was 10,000 or more. So we saw about 19% of those who were actively using or considering to use PHP were working at companies of over 10,000 people. So quite a, this stood out to us as there were very large companies using PHP, perhaps not what some people view PHP as being a boutique language, but no, this is showing that PHP is being used at enterprises, very large enterprises. In fact, if you look at those already using PHP and just focus on them, over 21% of those people work for companies with over 10,000 employees. Continuing looking at who is using PHP, we asked some questions around location. Are your developing groups located together? Are they distributed? And what we found is that developers who are co-located were about 80% of the time. About 20% of the respondents said that their developers were actually remote. And this was a rather large percentage, we thought. And what this says to us is that there is power in the cloud. Obviously, in the cloud we have, or on the internet we have collaboration tools such as instant messaging, email, things like Skype for video conferencing. But it also speaks to the excellent frameworks available specifically for PHP and its good collaboration tools that allow development groups to work distributed almost as well as they would together in one location. Moving on to how PHP is being used, we looked at we asked the types of applications that the organizations were building with PHP, and this number here, 60% describe their PHP app as revenue generating or critical in nature. That point is missing there in this bullet point. Actually, if you break it down to looking at those numbers, it's about almost 25% as revenue generating, and 85% indicating that their app is critical, or only 15% indicating that their app is non-critical. This was something else that stood out to us. A very large number of applications are critical, being used and being developed with PHP. Looking at the types of applications, which we'll see in one of the next slides, we also noticed that they are very well distributed. All different types of applications. PHP is not being used for just one particular area or type of application, but yes, it's actually very well distributed across many different types. Looking at this from a macro level, though, we see here in this chart that the breakdowns are, we allow people to choose certain answers, and the top answers were both internal and external web applications. And a very high percentage of these are external or internet-facing web applications. Going down the line, we see that there are business integration applications, apps with social connectivity, and a very large percentage of these PHP applications are actually the back end of mobile applications, another number that stood out to us. Looking more specifically at the types of applications, we see they include very critical functions. A very high percentage are what you would expect from a PHP application: content management systems, database or system administration. But then you see some other things here: user communication, data visualization, very high in the percentage, but also financial-based applications, e-commerce or retail applications. These are applications where there's direct monetary impact to the reliability and quality of these applications. Moving down the line, again, we see games, and that to us meant probably the back end of the games and support, et cetera. Continuing with how PHP is being used, we asked people to respond to what their primary business goals are, and we focused in this particular chart here on those actively using PHP. And what we see is that the largest percentages are around increasing efficiency and saving on costs. So people that are actively using PHP, these are their primary business goals. Next would be driving revenue and customer growth. So here we have, again, monetary and user-based impacts here, and also improving the customer experience. So those that are using PHP, these primary business goals go right in line with what we've seen in the rest of the survey, and we'll go over those results as we move along, that there is direct impact to both costs, revenue, and improved customer experience and customer growth when using PHP. Asking in the survey what the most important business goals are, we see that the top answer was to deliver higher quality applications. And again, we're focusing on those that are using PHP or actively have applications deployed with PHP. Next would be improving the user experience, and going down the line, we see application performance optimization and maximum application availability. So higher quality applications and improved user experience, the most important business goals of those that are using PHP. Following up from that, we see that when we surveyed these same people, we asked them if they plan to continue using PHP, and how many applications they plan to deploy with PHP. A very large percentage, 97%, said yes, they plan to use PHP in the future, and a very large percentage showed that they wanted to deploy or plan to deploy two to four more applications, or five or more applications going forward. So a very large percentage of those that are actively using PHP plan to deploy applications, and they plan to deploy multiple applications in the future. Speaks well to the growth of PHP in the marketplace. And we also took it that that meant that PHP is definitely meeting those business goals that we saw in the previous two slides. Moving along to what PHP development is like. From our survey, and we'll go over some of these results in a little while here, we see that PHP is mostly chosen for its higher quality. The applications that are built with PHP, our respondents tell us, are generally of higher quality. They are able to meet market demands and requirements faster. So it's faster time to market, and they can better meet customer requirements. And they also said that they are able to improve the user experience directly by using PHP. We asked, what are the main reasons you chose PHP? Most indicated speed of development, that it's easy to learn, and that there's a decreased ramp-up time. If you look at the specific numbers, you see that 61% of those that responded said speed of development was the number one answer. It's also the fact that PHP is open source and has its own open source license is another strong factor for why people choose to use PHP. There's a very widely available talent pool. Some say it's actually more or larger than those of Java developers. There is a very fast ramp-up time for new developers, so getting new developers up to speed on PHP in general, as well as your PHP applications, is very good. The availability of application frameworks, another high percentage, and the ease of use of working in the cloud. We followed up this question with which frameworks do you use? While 42% said they actually do not use a framework, 27% chose Zend framework as their most used framework. Going down the line, you see Symfony, Cake PHP, the other PHP frameworks that you would see in this area. But we were a little bit surprised to see that there was a large percentage that have not used the framework, and I pull this point out now because in some of our coming slides you'll see some information that we pull out in the benefits and challenges section that will be directly addressed by this percentage here, this large percentage of 42% not using a framework. So moving on to that, the challenges and benefits. We had many questions in the areas of ranking PHP against the organization's next most used development language. And we also asked them what their biggest challenges were, and also what the benefits, direct benefits of using PHP were. And most of the issues that the respondents to the survey brought out were usually related to business logic or performance or application-specific issues, not necessarily pointing out that PHP was an issue, which was good to see. We saw that infrastructure and deployment errors were minor and infrequent, especially when compared with other languages such as Java, where infrastructure and deployment errors were much higher or more frequent or more major in consequence. Most found it very easy to maintain a PHP stack, especially when compared with other languages and environments. We asked in the survey to rank some of the biggest challenges, and security rose to the top, both in just the one answer, security, and also being able to configure a secure PHP stack. Both ranked towards the top, not very high at 35%, but still at the top. And going back to a previous slide, we see that if you look at these top answers, security, debugging, deployment automation, they are directly addressable with the proper frameworks being chosen. And we feel that if those 42% of those who responded that said they were not using a framework, if they chose a framework, they probably could directly address their top issues here and bring these down greatly. So again, this does not indicate an issue with PHP, but probably with the fact that a good framework would help here. But overall, PHP is strong. Generally, very few, very minor issues. Like I said, security issues can be addressed with the right frameworks and tools. Most found it very easy to maintain a PHP stack, and they had fast turnaround with their applications. And to sum this up, with the state of PHP in the enterprise today, what the results of our survey indicate is that PHP is pervasive throughout the industry, but also pervasive within large organizations, large enterprises, not just within small boutique shops or smaller companies, but also across a large range, a variety of applications. It's not a specific use language. It's usable for a lot of different types of applications, and it is being used for many different types of applications. It's reliable enough for critical financial applications, and it's strong enough to be used in growth areas such as gaming and mobile. These are areas of the industry that are growing in popularity. The numbers of applications in this area are growing, obviously due to things like the strength of smartphones and online gaming in the Internet. There are direct benefits to end users as well as corporations. The fact that the organizations that we polled here in this survey indicated that using PHP has resulted in them meeting customer requirements faster and having higher quality applications backs this up. Talent is readily available and growing, a growing talent pool, and there are many frameworks and tools that are mature and strong that have been around for almost as long as PHP has been around that will directly address some of the issues that the organizations have mentioned, although few, but they have mentioned that they have to face, and these frameworks and tools should directly address those. And our survey shows that as these organizations look at frameworks, they probably will see that themselves. Okay, on to the next portion of our presentation. I'm going to pass the slides over to Ido Ben Moshe to present his portion of this today.
Great. Thank you, Eric. In the next couple of minutes, we will be reviewing a number of examples or case studies of PHP implementations in different enterprise IT organizations, mostly from different industries. These case studies will provide you with some additional insight into the drivers behind the adoption of PHP, the actual use of PHP and the different technologies around PHP in these different enterprises, and also the processes that companies have built around the implementation and use of PHP in their organizations. We will also look at the results and benefits that were achieved through the implementation of PHP practices in these organizations, both in development and production across the application lifecycle. Now, all these cases, the full case studies are available on Zed.com for additional reading. So the first case study that we'll cover comes from BNP. BNP, as you know, is one of the largest banking and financial services organizations globally. BNP's initiative, or main initiative, was focused around the acceleration of their high-performing web applications delivery. They were also looking to establish an agile, very iterative development process that allows them to produce new applications much faster, with the overall business goal of increasing the competitive advantages in the global banking and financial services markets. So initially, BNP has adopted PHP because of the ease of use and flexibility. And this is something that we've seen both in the survey and from our experience as a main common driver in the adoption of PHP initially in enterprises. The ease of use, flexibility, and the ease of ramp-up is driving the adoption quite early. So BNP has decided to use Zen framework, so standardization on the framework, to accelerate the PHP development project. They have been leveraging Drupal and WordPress for their content management system. And this is another very common driver that we see out there and a very common entry point for companies to start using PHP. These open source applications are readily available. They're widely used in the industry, and they tend to accelerate the development of content management-based systems and some additional applications that derive from the open source large PHP applications. And then BNP, as a result, deployed Zen's integrated PHP stack, and that is deployed across the application lifecycle, all the way from development through testing to production, basically standardizing on a single application stack. As a result, over 700 financial services and internal applications have been delivered. The applications, and this was evident from Eric's slides before, they span from data visualization, corporate internet site, all the way to business-critical applications that manage business-critical workflow processes. Standardization on frameworks and standardization on development environments was also achieved, so all the developers use the same stacks, use the same environments to develop, and all that allowed BNP to dramatically shorten the development cycle of their applications. The second case study that we will review comes from WebEx. WebEx is a well-known provider of business collaboration solution and part of Cisco Systems. So this is more of a technology company, a leader in the technology arena. To support their growing demand for the WebEx solutions, the company basically decided to deliver a reliable and scalable brand new online trial platform. The goal was to support easy self-service capabilities, both for WebEx's customers as well as WebEx's partners. So during that process, WebEx were also looking at implementing agility in their development environment and implementing and following development best practices. The end goal was, again, to improve the end user's experience, both from the partner organizations as well as the end users, the millions of end users that use WebEx each day. The process of implementing PHP included the route of basically adopting Zen's PHP stack and overall delivering a standard LAMP stack. So it's Apache is the web server, MySQL is the backend server, database server, Zen PHP running on Red Hat Linux. They have been standardizing on Zen framework, and that allows them to pretty much from the get-go increase the agility and implement code sharing and code reuse practices. And then another very common more standardization on environment, they have been implementing a VMware-based completely virtualized environment, which is, again, a very common theme that we see with the large enterprise accounts. As a result, while launching the application, launching the main free trial platform, WebEx have experienced and demonstrated a 68% improvement in the end user experience, and that is really measured by the time that it takes the end users to complete their signups for the service. Adopting frameworks and adopting agile code sharing and code reuse practices allowed WebEx to achieve 20 to 30% code reuse between their different projects. And that, as a result, allowed WebEx to really, on top of the free trial platform, start delivering more applications in different domains, including mobile website, a brand new mobile website, internal project management tools, marketing platforms, and so forth. And we do often see organizations in this scale that are driven to PHP because of a specific initiative. Usually it would be either speed of development, which is very common, or use of an open source application for content management systems, something such as Drupal or WordPress, or an e-commerce type solution, one of the PHP open source e-commerce type solutions, and then within a few months expand the development to more type of enterprise applications, including mobile, cloud applications, back-end processing systems, integration services, and so forth. And that is basically the driver that creates the diversity that we've seen in the survey. Our next example comes from the New York Stock Exchange, or NYSE Euronext. as you all know, NYSE Euronext is the world's leading equities exchange group. The initiative behind adopting PHP initially at the New York Stock Exchange comes from the need to deliver applications in a much faster way and following agile methodologies. So speed of delivery, as we've seen here, is again a very common driver behind the PHP adoption in the enterprise. Typically, we're seeing organizations that have experiences of multi-year delivery cycles, very cumbersome waterfall methodologies, and they are looking to accelerate the delivery, in particular when we're starting to see more mobile applications, more agile applications, applications that need to pretty much immediately connect to other systems. This finding is also confirmed in the survey that we've done. And again, we do see that the speed of development consistently is the primary reason for considering PHP in enterprises. So the initiative is, again, to implement a rapid agile development and deployment application methodology, so basically accelerate the overall delivery of the applications. They were looking at specifically accelerating a traditional 2-year development cycle. That was very common for the older applications, and there is a need, again, because of the very fast-changing business climate, to deliver applications much faster. They were looking from a business perspective to deliver modern, dynamic web applications, very flexible infrastructure that can scale up and down as needed. The process was really to establish a new PHP-powered web platform, so it includes anything from the virtual machines all the way to the PHP stack. Implementation of Drupal as the content management system and standardization on Drupal as the content management system, together with Zen framework for the application delivery and application development itself. And then standardize completely on the PHP stack, Zen server as the application server driving the web applications, and Zen Studio for the development platform. As a result, the New York Stock Exchange has launched 40 business-critical applications or business-critical sites for their user base in a time frame of about 18 months. They have been delivering a customized, scalable web applications really at a fraction of the time and cost compared to the previous methodologies before implementing an agile development practice based on frameworks and PHP. And they have been improving consistently the customer experience and customer satisfaction by using their new applications. The last case study that we will be reviewing today, again, giving a different angle from a completely different industry, is Group MT, or Group Mineral Technology. This is an organization, this is a manufacturing industrial organization in Europe that is responsible for both quality and process management in their large manufacturing plants across Europe. We're talking about over 50 manufacturing plants. And the main driver behind adopting PHP for Group MT was actually the need to implement rapid application development platforms, basically to modernize the green screen ERP systems that were running under IBMI. And this is something very common that we see, especially in large industrials. There is a lot of investment over the years in the data, in the business logic, and they basically looked at developing new applications quickly, but without having to completely re-architect and completely rewrite the business logic and legacy code that was running on their IBMI systems. Now, PHP is a native environment that runs on the IBMI systems or AS400 systems. It's supported jointly by Zen and IBM, and that allows organizations running IBMI or running business logic on IBMI to basically bring the web payload to their IBMI platform without the need to migrate their existing applications or reinvest years of investment in the currently running code. So the process at Group MT was basically to standardize on PHP as a development language and development environment and runtime environment on their IBMI machines, where, again, all their business logic, data, and legacy applications are still running. They have adopted the Zen PHP stack across the entire application lifecycle. So the same platform that runs on their IBMI production machines will run on their Linux machines, their Windows machines, and so forth. Group MT, much like the rest of the large organizations that we've seen today, have decided to implement Zen framework and standardize on the framework to basically allow a much more collaborative environment and to deliver a very code reuse-oriented, agile development methodology. So the use of framework is very common in organizations this side, especially the more mature organizations that deliver a large number and large-scale applications, and that drives rapid development, code reuse, and basically allows companies to quickly implement agile methodologies. The results of implementing PHP in the organization were initially allowing Group MT to build once and run the applications across all their 50 plants. So they build one PHP application, and that could easily be distributed to the runtime environment on the IBM I machines and utilize the same software across the plants. And as we've seen in other companies, they started because of one business initiative and immediately moved on to other applications. So the scope widened to the delivery of ERP applications, document management systems, maintenance management systems, and manufacturing execution systems. So systems that you would traditionally not associate with web technologies or PHP as a result of the rapid development capabilities, reuse of code, and just the ease of ramp-up of the development team allows these organizations to start delivering more applications quickly. And this again shows the breadth and depth of the type of PHP applications that we're seeing there, especially in large enterprises, and really the typical expansions from one initiative to standard software development practices and rapid application delivery. So with that, and again, as I mentioned before, the full case studies for further reading are available on the Zen website at zen.com. And with that, we will end our case study portion. And let me please introduce Elaine.
Thanks, Ido. This is Elaine Lennox. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Zend, and I'm just going to spend about 3 minutes and give you some information on who Zend is and what we do for clients. And then we're going to open it up to Q&A, and we already have quite a few questions that have already been submitted. So just to give you some context on Zend, Zend is the PHP company. We're really the company behind the PHP language. We were instrumental in creating today's PHP language, and we are the sponsor of Zend Framework, which is the most popular application framework for PHP applications. Zend Framework has been downloaded about 15 million times at this point, and it continues to be used in many, many companies. At this point, the PHP language has about 5 million developers around the world, and Zend works with companies, and we provide a solution for both application development and delivery of PHP applications. You can see a little bit on Zend's solution on the right-hand side of this page. Our core offering that we work with clients on is called Zen Server, and Zen Server is basically an application server. Think of it as giving you all the enterprise capabilities you need to run PHP applications. And what I mean by that is scalability, elasticity, high availability, and most importantly, monitoring, performance application monitoring, troubleshooting capabilities. So you could use the open source PHP code, right, and use a very simple web server, but what Zen provides is a couple of big things above and beyond that. One is support. A lot of clients come and work with Zen and Zen Server because of the support that they get. And the other is this in-depth dashboard of troubleshooting and monitoring and performance management capability, in addition to scalability and high availability. So that gives you an idea. At this point, we have about 40,000 clients around the world, and we work with them on everything from development tools, deploying Zen Server. We also do consulting projects. We have training and certification in PHP as well. And once a year, we actually host the biggest PHP conference in the world. It'll be happening in October this year, PHP 2012, otherwise known as ZendCon. So we work very actively both with the community of 5 million PHP developers and also with enterprises and development managers who are looking to develop and deploy PHP applications. And so I'm going to keep it simple and pass it back to Eric so we can answer some of the questions that have come in so far.
Thank you, Elaine, and thank you, Ido. Now, before we begin today's Q&A, please fill out the feedback form that is opened on your computer in front of you. To complete this form, please press the Submit Answer button on the bottom of the page. Thank you in advance for filling out the feedback form. Your participation in this survey allows us to better serve you. And I'll give you just a moment to maybe click on that link, and the browser that opens up, maybe you can just put that to the side for now. As we move to the Q&A session, I'll give you one more moment. So you can click on that link, and I will now move to the Q&A session. To the Q&A portion of our event. As a reminder, to participate in the Q&A, just type your question into the text box located below the media player. Then click the Submit button. I'm going to move to the questions. We have quite a few, as Elaine said. And the very first question is, what is a PHP stack? Ido?
Thank you, Eric. So I will take this one. The PHP stack is essentially the runtime environment or the commerce that is required to run a PHP application. It's basically the set of what you would call a virtual machine or the parsers, but it is basically the stack on which the actual code runs upon. So it's essentially when you run a piece of PHP code, a script or a code file, there is an interpreter behind it that will read the code, parse it, run it, and based on the operations that you've coded into your code, will execute them on the specific operating system, or if it needs to connect, for example, to a database and so forth. So the PHP stack is essentially the runtime environment that is required to run PHP applications.
Excellent. Thank you, Ido. Next question reads, Ruby on Rails seems to be gaining a lot of traction. How do you contrast PHP with Ruby and Rails?
Eric, this is Elaine. I can take that one if you want.
Okay, thank you.
So Ruby on Rails and PHP are very similar in some ways in that they're both dynamic web programming languages. And so what's interesting is you've seen both Ruby and PHP and pretty much the family of dynamic languages grow very aggressively over the last decade, and in the case of Ruby, over the last 3 or 4 years in particular. There are similarities. They're both very similar. I would say major differences, they're both very similar in they're simpler and faster, and there's real speed of development benefits. Just like you saw with PHP with this survey, that we saw that development managers said that when they choose to create a project in PHP, they can get it developed faster, I think 88%, so they can get it out the door faster if they choose to use PHP. Ruby has some similar benefits in terms of speed of development. One of the big differences is just how mainstream the language is. Ruby is very popular with enthusiast developers. PHP at this point is very mainstream and very broad in larger companies, and so has a somewhat larger community of developers at this point, but more importantly, it's just had longer time to become, I would say, a bit more robust and deployed in very large companies like New York Stock Exchange around the world. So I would say we're all in the same family. We love each other. I'm not going to ding Ruby because I actually think any dynamic language is a good step forward if you're looking at fast application development. If you look at it, you'll find there's a bit more robust ecosystem and definitely more tools for enterprise deployment around PHP than you'll find with Ruby today.
Excellent. Thank you, Elaine. Moving on to the next question. How does Zend, the PHP company, make money with PHP, an open source program?
I guess I should take that one too, Eric. This is Elaine, as the Chief Marketing Officer for Zend. It's a great question, and I actually, when people try to understand Zend's business model, I say, if you want to think of a company like Red Hat, we're very similar to what happens in the Linux marketplace, right? You could go and build your own Linux stack and deploy it with no support. You would have to do all the patches. You would have to do all the updates. You would have to basically be on the lookout for the latest security errors and make sure you're fixing it or finding a patch somewhere. What Zend does for clients is we do all of that for you, so you don't have to deploy your development team to basically do a do-it-yourself, stack, as Ido was explaining stack earlier. And then on top of that, we provide a lot of capability in the management space around management and monitoring and troubleshooting. And so we make most of our money on Zend Server. And that's about 2/3 of Zend's revenue, just to give you a sense. And we deploy that with clients both in the cloud and on-premise. So we have a lot of clients, thousands who deploy Zen Server on-premise, but we also have thousands of clients who deploy Zen Server in a cloud environment through cloud providers. So you can buy Zen Server from us, but you can also buy it, for example, through the Amazon Marketplace for pennies an hour, depending on how much usage you have. You can buy it through RightScale, who's one of our cloud management partners. You can buy it through IBM on the IBM Smart Cloud. So we actually collaborate with big cloud vendors to enable them to sell Zen Server as an environment for you to run your applications on, and we help clients both by providing Zen Server, and I said it's 2/3 of our revenue. The other third is actually in the space of consulting, deployment, training, and development tools. And we have a very broad penetration of Zen Studio, for example, and we have a free cloud development platform, which you can find at phpcloud.com, which we use as a way to get people to get familiar with our tools. So most of our money comes from Zen Server, and it's kind of like Red Hat model is the way I would say it. And what that enables us to do is to also contribute back to the PHP language. So Zen continues to contribute to Zen Framework, which is a free application framework. We have a free development cloud platform, and we also actually have a free starter version of Zen Server called Community Edition that people can use as well.
Thanks, Elaine. Next question. I'm hoping there will be some information on how best to lock down PHP.
Thanks, Eric. This is Ido. I will take this one. There is information. There is plenty of security-related information, and PHP again runs on the web server. So there is information related to the operating system layer. There's information on security in the web application layer, whether it's Apache or IIS or any other web server. And there are also guidelines or best practices around running or writing code that is designed for maximum security. So as Zend, we do offer training classes that teach developers how to, for example, write their code in a way that will prevent SQL injections or any other type of web type attack through the application layer. We also perform in Zend Professional Services security audits, so we would come to our customers and pretty much review the source code, identify patterns that hackers would typically use to get or gain control of the applications and so forth. But again, there's plenty of training material out there, and there are best practices both on the code level as well as in the infrastructure level. The PHP runtime itself is often patched. There are many minor versions that address security issues as soon as they are being they're made public, or sometimes even before they're made public. Zend itself releases security patches, is in some cases within an hour of identification of security issue within the PHP stack or the runtime itself. So there is plenty of information out there.
Excellent. Thank you, Ido. Next question. What are the direct benefits of moving a WordPress CMS from standard LAMP to Zend server environment?
Okay, let me take this one as well. This is Ido again. So there are a few benefits, and they're really multi-tiered. The first benefit is that you do not need to maintain your own LAMP stack. By moving to Zend Server or a Zend-based platform, the stack is maintained, it's tested, it's a fully configured and tested stack that Zend does before it's released. So we patch it, we test it completely, we test it in multiple scenarios, so when we release something, it comes with the full support of Zend. The second is really runtime support, so if something happened to the PHP environment, to the code base, even in the web server layer, then Zend provides support up to 24/7 support as needed based on the criticality to the business. The other aspect of it is really more advanced management capabilities and scale capabilities, performance optimizations that are available in Zend Server and are not available in the open source stack. So for example, application monitoring, code tracing, which allows you to basically trace or inspect transactions in production to identify performance bottlenecks, memory utilization, pretty much any type of issues that happen in runtime. The Zend Server stack allows you to inspect these transactions and understand what happened. So both detect problems, identify the root cause of problems, and then a set of tools, for example, to optimize performance, such as caching technologies, such as job queue, which allows you to offload parts of the web transaction to basically improve the performance of the application and so forth. So they're both the support side of benefits of moving to the Zen stack, but also additional capabilities that allow the application to increase its scalability, its maturity, and basically ensure availability of the application.
Okay, thanks, Ido. Next question, is there a manual for PHP?
Ido, do you want to take this one and talk about
I'll take this one. I mean, this is a little bit of a complex question. There is a manual that, for the PHP language. There are many tutorials, books, training classes. We train, for example, as Zen in Zen training, we train and certify thousands of engineers every year on utilizing PHP, anything from entry level to very advanced object-oriented use of frameworks and so forth. So most PHP frameworks are well documented, and the PHP language itself, including most of the extensions, are well documented.
Thank you, Ido. Next question. Does Zen Server support multiple apps across multiple domains?
Ido, we're letting you answer a lot of these.
That's right. Yours. The short answer is yes. I mean, again, the question is a little bit complex, but the answer is yes. Zen Server supports multiple applications, and again, the web servers might have different architectures, but Zen Server itself does support multiple applications.
And Eric, this is Elena. I also saw a question come in there about databases while we're on the question of support. And it was a question about MySQL and the popularity of MySQL as a database. And I just wanted to point out that MySQL is very popularly used with PHP, but one of the interesting things is that we increasingly see enterprise clients use PHP in a way that it is connected to their database that they already have, which might either be an Oracle database or an IBM DB2 database, for example. That's one of the things when I say that PHP has very good penetration in enterprises and larger companies. Because PHP has been around at this point for 17 years, Zen and Oracle and IBM and Microsoft and many companies have worked together to put all of the connectors and the integration in place. So we actually see in the enterprise just as many clients integrating PHP with Oracle or with an IBM database, and the data sits in them versus MySQL, although MySQL is incredibly popular in general with the PHP language.
Thank you, Elaine. Next question reads, can you quantify fraction of time and cost?
Yeah, so I will take this one. A fraction of time and cost really depends on a specific case study. It's very difficult to get into, each specific example. Obviously we can do that, but when we're talking about a fraction of time and cost, it's something that we tend to see with PHP, and there are basically two or a little bit more reasons why we see acceleration and why PHP is really easier to develop with and faster to develop with. The first is that ramping up PHP developers is fairly simple and much simpler than some other languages that are typically more complex to jump into. PHP can be developed or architected in a very complex, object-oriented, heavy framework use way, but you can also start with very simple projects. So the ramp-up time is fairly simple, and for some, some projects, it is fairly quick to deliver a PHP application. The second is the availability of frameworks. PHP has open source frameworks that take care of a vast majority of the plumbing that you will need to deal with sometimes in other languages. So the frameworks basically allow you to build a shell for the application, allows you to connect to different services such as Facebook API or Google API or things like that, allow you to connect easily to databases and map data structures. So there's a lot in the frameworks that basically allow the PHP developers to deliver applications much quicker, and the bulk of that code is tested and certified by the framework maintainers. The third is the availability, and this is something that is quite unique to PHP. There are massive amounts of open source code available to pretty much handle every major task out there, whether it's CMS, Content Management System, which is a big PHP domain if we're looking at the Drupals, Joomla, WordPress, Typo3 in Europe, and some other content management systems out there. They're all open source. They're all free. They're all well tested and very popular within large organizations. So building a CMS or building a site that is heavily reliant on a content management system is fairly easy in PHP because you already start with a very solid foundation. And most of the code that handles the back-end processing is already handled. Similarly, you will see it in e-commerce. So, for example, Magento, which is one of the most popular e-commerce infrastructures out there, is PHP-based. OS Commerce, Zen Commerce, and so forth. So many of these open source free application infrastructures, same with blogging and social media. They're all in PHP. They're all out there. And that allows you to cut significantly the development time and cost. Because rather than developing a homegrown system, it's very easy in PHP to grab components that are readily available out there.
Thanks, Ido. As a final question, before we wrap up, configuration and execution of PHP debugging sessions seems to be a complex and fragile process. Is improvement being sought in this area?
So this really depends on the tools that are being used. So configuring PHP debugging, it really depends on the debugger that you use, the IDE, if an IDE is used at all. As Zen, again, we focus on our, we focus significant effort in simplifying our Zen Studio product and making it, as user-friendly as possible and providing developers with an integrated development environment that allows them to easily debug PHP applications. We also produce the debugging extensions. And for production, and that's one of the main and probably one of the most popular features in Zen Server, is the ability to actually record transactions as they execute in production. So Zen Server allows the Zen Server administrators and developers to record specific transactions based on alerts. So for example, if a certain transaction took over the threshold that the admin defined, then we will record that transaction in production, and the developers can later on take a recording, kind of a digital documentary of this transaction, and post-mortem analyze what happened to that transaction in production. So we definitely invest significant efforts in creating debugging tools, creating troubleshooting tools, and allowing the system administrators to detect the problems as they happen in production and immediately escalate the data back to the developers.
Thank you, Ido. Thank you, Elaine. As we wrap up, thank you again for attending today's webcast, The State of PHP in the Enterprise, brought to you by Information Week and Zend, the PHP company. This webcast is copyright 2012 by United Business Media, LLC. The presentation materials are owned or copyrighted by, if this is the case, by Information Week and Zend, who are solely responsible for its content, and the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. On behalf of our guests, Ido and Elaine, I'm Eric Bruno. Thanks for your time and have a great day.